Welcome to the episode, Jake. It's nice to have you. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, definitely. My name is Jake Zaslav. I am a graduate student at Concordia University, and I look at AI, intimacy, and breath.
AI, intimacy, and breath.
Yeah, so essentially, the way I like to describe it is I look at how do we form relationships with machines. I think a lot of people, when I say that, assume some sort of sexual or romantic relationship, which is not 100% true. I mean, there's definitely an element to that, but I think I'm really interested in looking at those small relationships, those types of relationships you have with someone at the coffee shop or on the train, those little moments of intimacy.
Okay.
And essentially, I'm taking those moments and looking at where do they come about when we're interacting with technology.
Okay. Would you like to?
Yeah. So specifically right now, I'm looking at breath, stuff like that. And looking at how does a tiny gesture like that affect our relationship to that machine. This was kind of inspired by the fact that, in summer 2024, there were some videos circulating around the internet that went pretty viral showing ChatGPT having to pause and take audible breaths while it's speaking. So I think in the video itself, and I'll send you a link, it's asked to count to 50, and it'll do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Right? So that little moment of breath. And that kind of spread like wildfire online. And there was a very interesting reaction that came from that. Some people thought it was fascinating, this amazing moment of technological advancement, and other people thought it was terrible, terrifying. Why is this machine acting this way? And so I think that kind of tension between the two is where I'm really interested at. How does something like including breath create these both moments of fascination and of true horror?
True horror, yeah.
And how does that affect that moment of working with the machine?
When you said intimate moments of a machine, what machine are we talking about? I'll try to ask you questions in a very layman terms.
Yeah,
so that
please
I know,
do. I feel like as an academic, I kind of get used to the same terms over and over and again.
Yeah, so that we actually kind of understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I talk about machine, I use the term machine very broadly, right? This could be anything from a pencil to an advanced AI, right? Specifically here, though, I'm looking at artificial intelligence and robots, and at least what we think is artificial intelligence.
Okay.
There's a really interesting, difference where we can look at, is there actually, a robot behaves one way, a computer program that's hard-coded behaves another way, and you could say, well, AI is different because it uses learning and it's able to go beyond its programming in a certain way. I'm less interested in that distinction because I'm really interested in the subjective experience. And I don't think that there is necessarily that much of a difference for your everyday user to tell, if this robot is moving, is it AI or is it hard-coded? You know what I mean?
So what's the subjective experience?
That subjective experience, it looks at the individual experience, right? What are those thoughts and emotions that are going through your head, the physical sensations that come from interacting with this machine?
So it's not about the machine, it's about how you react to the machine when you're actually interacting with the machine.
Yes, I would say so. I think there is an element, right, where it is a little bit about the machine, right? Because there's a very important design choice to add in breath here, right? Breath is not something that is actually very easy to code in, to differentiate, to be able to do. It required incredible advancements in this technology to be able to get it to breathe.
For the machine.
For the AI to breathe.
The AI to breathe.
Right, so it required very specific choices on the side of the designers that are important to how the machine operates, to how the AI operates. And so it's important to think about how features like that affect these experiences. I think one of my issues when it comes to how people are approaching AI is that oftentimes we just assume, okay, more lifelike is better, more human-like is better. We just keep on moving forward without taking the second to actually pause and think about whether that people actually feel engaged by that. I'm really interested in both those moments of fascination, those moments of anxiety, but those together don't always make the best experience for working. I think a great example, actually, a professor of mine brought up to me recently, was thinking about spreadsheets, right? A spreadsheet is not at all how a human thinks, how a human processes, but it's a great way for us to be able to look and to understand data and to be able to pull out insights. Trying to make a spreadsheet more human doesn't actually always make it better at its job. And I think trying to make an AI more human doesn't always make it better at working and interacting with people.
That's right. So, okay, thank you for sharing. I would like to understand it better. When you said trying to make the machine better would not make the lives better, or
Trying to make it more human.
more human. But okay,
Did I say that wrong? Did I say make the machine better?
You mentioned make the machine better would not change our human experience, something like that. So I was trying to understand. I didn't actually quite
I might have said
understand
that wrong then. I think what I meant to say was trying to make the AI more human-like.
Yeah, okay.
Better at being a human.
Better.
Does not make it that our experience working with it is better.
Is better. Okay. Okay. So what's your take on this then? Like, okay, how can the experience be better?
I think right now, one of the great things that being in graduate school and being in the academy affords me is the privilege of being able to trouble, to be able to I'm going to use a fancy, pretentious philosopher name here, but Derrida talks about deconstruction. And so part of what I'm doing here is it's not necessarily figuring out what's better, but it's deconstructing our assumptions in order to have us come up with a more multifaceted idea about the human experience, about the technological experience, about how we relate to both ourselves and to things beyond humans. So I think this question of better is not necessarily one I'm targeted at for explicit design. There's other situations, right, where, especially looking at some of my work around accessibility design and accessibility literacy tools, I am really focused on how can we make these experiences better. But here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to really break down these assumptions and have us pause and be able to take in this more multifaceted understanding of the human experience.
That's where I would like to get more deeper. Thanks for sharing what you shared about your research, what you would like to, or what you would like to work upon, what you're trying to contribute. And I would like to know more, a little deeper understanding of what you're trying to bring now, like what you're trying or what you're working on, and what you're trying to bring about a change, or not exactly a change, but what you're trying to achieve with your research.
So my research looks at this experience of breathing with the machine. Creating an experience, in my case, my experiment involves creating an experience where people have to sit down and take part in a breathing meditation with an AI agent that not only breathes, but similar to how humans behave, is able to change its breath in a similar way that you and I might. When we hear someone breathe, there's been great studies. For example, some researchers named Chub and Koval, 2019 released a study that found that people will naturally follow inhales and exhales of another human that they follow. And in their case, actually, digital avatars, right? So we have this entrainment is what we call it, that we lock on to these rhythms that we hear. And so what I'm trying to do by creating this machine that's able to entrain and create this breathing experience is I really think of it as a sort of elicitation machine, right? It gives people this experience that may be a little bit mellow or dramatic compared to what we actually have now, but it's not that far off and can allow them an experience to hook onto, so that when we have conversations afterwards, when I interview them, we can be able to really dig into these thorny questions about breath, about what it feels like to breathe with something that isn't human. What are the thoughts and emotions that emerge from that respiration together? In a way that I don't think we could if I just asked you, imagine you're breathing with ChatGPT, right? There is something about being able to viscerally experience it, being able to have an experience that gives you something to hook onto, right? Something to draw from, that can really help us get at these core emotions, these core subjective experiences that help form who we are.
Wow. Well, like very well articulated, very well explained. Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. I'm still trying to understand the question you asked, like how would I feel? How would I feel? And I'm trying to take a moment to actually reflect, how would I feel if I'm breathing with a machine? I've never thought about it. And I think it's an experience that probably I would love to try, just to see how it makes me feel. How maybe it's like something different, or maybe it'll be different at the first, but maybe I'll get used to it. Like how we've got used to phones, technology. Maybe it would be part of lifestyle. As we go along, and probably would just assimilate this in our lifestyles as we did everything else.
I definitely agree with points of that, right? Like, I think there's a lot of ways that technology does assimilate into our lives, and technology can have extremely large changes in how society operates, how we interact, how we imagine about things, what's possible. But I think we can also look into moments from technologies that have been around for a long time, that have been doing stuff for a long time, and that we've seemingly assimilated to. That we still have those moments of disconnect, those moments that kind of break down the shell of reality a little bit that we formed. I guess think back, you ever had this experience where you're talking to someone on your phone, and then you go in Instagram and you automatically see an ad there. Right? This is something people have been talking about happening to them at least a decade at this point, right? And in many ways, we don't think about those moments. But sometimes those kind of moments break through. They kind of form a little crack in our understanding of ourselves, our understandings of how we operate in this world, and they poke through. So while I think that breath may not always be thought of, and in fact, right, ChatGPT does this now, and not everyone thinks about this all the time. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still these moments that are important for us to investigate, especially when we think about, hey, where do we put in lots of money? How do we think about what's important to focus on? And also what's possible, right?
What's possible. Yeah.
What are we not thinking about because we're so obsessed with trying to make it sound more human?
Yeah, well, my understanding is like, or my question to you is, why do you think, when you have so many other humans, why do you want to replace a machine or replace another human with a machine, and then make that machine act as a human? So I'm trying to understand that perspective of, we have humans around, but we're trying to make a machine which is non-human, but act as a human.
Yeah. So you're asking from the company side, why would they want that?
or as a human perspective as well, like let's say
I,
if or you or I, let's say we're connecting, we could just still sit here and take breaths
yeah,
together if we want. Why would I'm just trying to understand the need for it.
yeah.
Like, what's the use case scenario or the vision for this, to
Mm-hmm.
have a machine act as a human for you in
Yeah.
the first place, because it's a machine.
So I think, this is something that comes from these companies themselves. And part of the problem here is what we call the black box, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't totally understand intentionality, why they specifically feel that way about something, but we can make conjectures. And so here's my conjecture as to why. I think that there is this kind of idea that if we can make our AI sound more realistic, we'll like interacting with it more. And I think that actually, if we look at the origins to that, I think it can kind of play into a lot of the ways that fiction itself has defined a lot of how we think about machinery. I'd argue that the movie Her, Spike Jonze's movie, I think 2014, with Scarlett Johansson and Joaquin Phoenix, has had an incredible influence on the ways that we understand AI and the ways that we understand voice agents. Sam Altman has specifically talked about how important this was.
Mm-hmm.
I think there we see a version of AI that is very human, that is thought of as this companion that can create this closeness. And I think this desire for closeness, like really for intimacy, is quite a fascinating one when it comes to these desires to create breath in a machine. And in fact, I think in some ways what it does is it does create closeness, right? You feel yourself in some ways being moved by this machine. There is this feeling of physical closeness that comes from the movement of the body, right? That this, what I like to call touchless touch, right? In the same way that hearing me breathe causes your body to move and change and morph in response, it's the same thing as if I were to touch you, right? Your skin would move, your body would move. And in fact, touch is a very intimate thing. So I think hearing breath is a way of creating this intimacy. And I think it's quite, in some ways, it's quite drawing, this closeness through breath. It promises this kind of knowingness, similar to Her, right? Where the machine can know exactly what you want. You don't have to worry about people misunderstanding you. You don't have to worry about this perfect clarity, right? There's, you and the machine are so close together that you can know each other.
How does the machine know? And
Well,
how do you get close to the machine as a human?
Well, once again, this is, in some ways, this is a fantasy, right?
Okay.
You can't know a machine, and the machine can't know you in that way. Language is not a perfect one-to-one. There isn't this way to be able to take your thoughts, which themselves are not clear manifestations of what you want, right? You can't put into words these desires all the time. There's no way for it to get that. And I think also you kind of know as well that you can't know the machine in this way.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to look at reviews from that period about the new advanced voice mode, where people would kind of have this, ambivalent take on it, right? Where it is very exciting to hear it like this, but then there are these moments where they just say, "Oh, but I know I can't feel this way with it. I know that it can't actually know what I'm saying, what I want." And I think that also highlights kind of the more disturbing elements of it. That we do know internally we can't relate to this machine, that we can't connect, we can't form this almost second self together with the machine. And I think that realization, both that it's not possible and also that we could get so close, pokes a lot of holes in how we understand what it means to be human, how we understand what our self is. And I think pulling from some of my research into psychoanalytic theory, right? Those moments that threaten the self are when some of our defenses work hardest. And I think that, in some ways, explains why people are, get so disgusted by it, right? In some ways, it's not really that big of a deal. It's a bit of an overreaction, but I think if it was just to be, I'm just hearing this thing that seems stupid, or why does it need this, right? But I think sometimes these really intense reactions are because it points to more than that. That this experience is not just an interaction between you and a machine. It's also an interaction with you and yourself. All the other selves, all the other layers that kind of form who you are and how you understand the world. And that when we threaten those, it feels similar in some ways to being attacked.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And in pilot studies, I've actually seen some very interesting responses. I've had people both feel annoyed, disgusted, but I've also had people feel threatened. People who had to stop and say, I couldn't listen anymore. This was too disturbing. I just felt myself thinking about my own breath, and I started getting anxious. And I think that's a very interesting thing for us to explore, and not something that these companies think about. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to get at with my work here, is that there are these much more complex layers to the experience of talking to an AI, to the experience of interacting with the machine. And we also need to think about those and to reckon with those.
I like that's beautiful. The way you explain, I really enjoyed listening to that experience of how you talked about we know what machine cannot do as humans. Also, it cannot feel you, it cannot see you, it cannot emote the same emotions as humans, but still it's powerful, like how it could bring or how it could connect you to yourself, how it could bring emotions that probably it's not from the machine, but it's the emotion that you already contain or already have within you, and that just gets emoted. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note, right? Like psychoanalysis, psychologists have brought up for years that these sorts of dynamics happen between you and I, right? They happen in all sorts of situations. But we don't often talk about them in relationship to non-human objects, subjects, as we can call them, and specifically machines. And I think that if we're trying, we talked about from the design side, trying to think about the human experience, but also from the psychological side, right? Like and as a researcher side, if we're trying to understand how humans relate to each other and how humans relate in general, it's a failure to ignore these very important relationships and moments of interaction that happen just because they're between a human and a piece of silicon and circuits, right?
Yeah. How do you think the psychoanalysis part actually plays a role in the human interaction with the machine? Because machine at the end, you mentioned, it doesn't have feelings, it doesn't have how do you say, sense of ability to sense how you feel, but how do you relate that with human emotion?
I think, I'll also say, one, I'm not a clinician, right? The way I approach psychoanalysis is from a long history of humanities professors, people from the world of literature, music, philosophy, who have taken up queer studies as well, and film, who have taken up these ideas from psychoanalyst clinicians like Jacques Lacan, Sigmund Freud, Melanie Klein, Didier Enzu, Jean Laplanche. and have looked at how can we take them out of the clinical setting to look at these larger situations where they appear in other notes. In some ways, I think that it's something that is often ignored, psychoanalysis as a method today in STS. There was definitely a big heyday for a lot of the 20th century of psychoanalysis.
What's STS? Sorry.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
In science, technology, and society.
Okay.
Thinking about how does science and technology interact with society and with people. Psychoanalysis has been kind of forgotten or ignored in a lot of settings with technology. I'd say the past 15, 20 years. Because in some ways it's hard, right? It's not something like a maybe more cognitive type of psychology, which is really easy to measure, which is based in experiments. It requires a lot of subjective work and thorny questions that you're asking about, which can be hard to turn into data, but that doesn't mean that it's not a valuable way to think through these questions and through these relationships. So you asked about how psychoanalysis can be useful here. Well, I think psychoanalysis is actually one of the strongest tools we have to analyze these experiences. A really useful, 100 years of thinking about relationships and analyzing relationships and the way that different experiences haunt those experiences, those contemporary moments. The ways that the self is built up and gets hacked at, attacked, changed, morphed and brought to the surface in our day-to-day interactions. Psychoanalysis has a lot of really interesting points around this, especially what I talked about before about this idea of the sense of self that is threatened. That comes a lot from many psychoanalytic scholars. For me, I'm pulling a lot from as well a psychoanalyst in New York, Avi Sakatopoulos, who also is a scholar of and draws a lot from a French psychoanalyst, Jean Laplanche, who talks about how the ego is formed through interactions and through these moments of not knowing. But he also brings up this idea of detranslation, that you can have these moments that in some ways unravel the self, what they call the ego. Right? When we say the ego, we mean the sense of self. There's a lot of ways what we mean the ego, but essentially here, how I'm referring to it is the sense of self. How there are moments where we can kind of shatter that ego, push it beyond, create those holes that cause it to unravel like a piece of thread. And the ego, the self, is always going to reform, right? Like if we had no sense of self, we would not be able to walk around to exist. As much as we can say like the sense of self is built, it's not inherent, it's flimsy in some ways, but it's necessary. Some part of it is necessary just to operate in our society. So with Jean Laplanche, what he talks about is these moments where we can break down the ego, and then when it reforms, though, maybe there's something new that comes up, right? Maybe more open, more willing to open yourself up to ideas and to maybe push aside some of those really strongly held beliefs or convictions that have created these knots.
Yeah, so basically what you meant is like deconstruction. When you talked about deconstruction, is also the idea of like deconstructing your old ego to rebuild with new patterns, with new ideas, with new...
but I think it's I think on an academic level, I think it's important to note that things like the detranslation of the ego, it's not like an easy academic experience, right? And in some ways, I think this is where it's really important to look at these everyday moments, these moments rooted in the senses, right? In listening, in feeling, in the body. It requires very intense moments to kind of break these holes, very intense emotions. And so it's not something that can always be articulated. It can be in those moments where you maybe push yourself a little bit hard, bring yourself into this uncomfortable zone, and you feel that moment of breakage, that moment where you just can't take it anymore, and maybe stay a second longer. It's these micro moments of push, of what Avisakhtapolu calls the overwhelm, these overwhelming moments. And so part of what I'm thinking about as well is what happens if, when we're listening to this breath of the machine, if we push it to the moment of overwhelming, and we let ourselves stay, and we let our sense of self break a little bit there, what forms differently? What becomes more open when we let ourselves really breathe with the machine?
What's your take? What's your personal take on it? Like, how do you, how do you feel?
I think you've kind of hit the $1 million question here, right? And it's something that I constantly battle. I think that it can be really easy to say it will be this wonderful, optimistic, utopian moment, and this can lead to this better world if everyone just breathed with the machine and let themselves feel that way. But I also think that is in some ways what Laurent Berlant calls cruel optimism. This dream that prevents us from actually achieving any sort of happiness, because we always just look for this beautiful, amazing moment. I guess what I'm hoping for, in some ways, my little bit of optimism, right? Because it's hard not to fall into that, any sort of optimism, right?
No, but we're allowed to have optimism.
But my hope is that I guess it opens us up a little bit more to what I said before, to think about and be open to and to take as part of the human experience these moments, these emotions, these interactions with things that we can't totally understand.
Have you got a chance? I mean, I'm trying to understand, because you talked about breath and it's your research. Have you got a chance to actually experience it?
Yeah.
Or it's still
yeah.
or
So
is it
it
just a
is.
process?
It's a process. It's a process in that this actually, originally I did come to this idea of breathing with a machine as a very utopian thing. I thought of this idea of the melding of humans and machines, this truly kinship that we can make through breath. And I, in last fall, did what I could call a pilot project. And I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, where I had a breathing meditation and you could hear an AI breathing in and out, and it would respond a little bit. Or not an AI, a coded program would breathe in and out. And what I found actually was that people hated it. People thought it was such a distressing experience. I had a friend who stopped after 5 minutes and said, "I can't do this anymore, Jake. This is too much." And I was actually quite downtrodden by that. I was like, they didn't get it. They didn't understand. This is supposed to be this amazing experience, and if only they sat through it. But then I think that there is actually, I came to be a lot more interested about these disturbing moments, this anxiety, the ways that both of these emotions can play at once, or that different people can feel these different emotions. What is it about it that's so magnetic to it and so distressing? And listen, on a personal level, of course, I guess I've gotten high on my own supply, as they say, right? Like, as you're building this machine, I need to test it out and I can feel it. In fact, just the other day, I was working on the mechanism around timing the breath and making it interactive. And I found myself changing to the breath.
Wow.
I found my own breathing shift. I found myself breathing with it. And it was this moment of just like, shake out a little bit. You know what I mean? This is quite fascinating.
I have goosebumps. I don't know for what reason, but just to understand and to feel your expression, to feel how you're responding to it. I feel like I resonate.
Yeah.
To an experience that probably you want to create and like still like.
Yeah,
still in
it's
but, like,
this
people
entrainment,
that-
right?
Yeah.
This it's almost this rhythm I'm creating, right?
Yeah.
There, I mean, you're a drummer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think rhythm is actually a really important thing for thinking about how we think about life and interactions.
Yeah.
There's a French philosopher named Henri Lefebvre who talks about rhythm analysis, and he looks at the rhythms in the city. And his arguments are that rhythm is everywhere. It's that movement from day into night.
Yeah.
It's the to and fro of a train through the station.
Yeah.
It's the work week. Monday through Friday is when I work.
Yeah.
The weekend is when I'm free. And so there are these rhythms everywhere that kind of push and pull us. And I think it's really important to think about rhythm.
Yeah.
Breath itself is a rhythm, right?
Yeah.
When we're breathing with the machine, we're hooking on to these rhythms together. And so I'm happy you could feel that way. I think maybe it's a testament, right, to thinking to rhythm and the ways that rhythms interact and push and pull.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. It seems so interesting. I'm super intrigued. Maybe I'll get to try it someday. I would like to know if in case there's anything that you would want us to know as people who are like, let's say at least me, fascinated by your research, that what to expect from this. Now let's say since it's still in development, where do I foresee it, or where do you foresee it coming in play in life in general?
That's an interesting question, right? I talked about the privilege of the academy, and I think there's an immense privilege there that means I don't need to think about money when I'm making this work, right? Like, I have funding from different opportunities. I don't need to think about, hey, will this be adopted immediately into people's... will I make a product out of this? And in fact, I don't want to make a product out of it because I think it is hard to be able to ask these difficult questions when part of your stakeholders is to make money.
Make money,
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hype, and hype can sell.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think I have a real privilege here. I guess my hope is that it does cause people to pause, right? To people to think. And if I'd say anything to your listeners here, right? Like, what do I want you to get out of it? I would love for us to be able to take a little bit more critical approach to how we think about feelings and thoughts, emotions and experiences, right? On one end, to notice what machines are doing, right? To notice how does it make you, what are the ways that it tries to be more human? What are the different features that make the actual experience? But then also to take those experiences with curiosity, right? I think it's really easy to just hate on AI. And actually, I think it's great that people take these things critically, and that there are a lot of researchers who are doing the important work to look at the ways that AI contributes to major issues today, from the environment to wealth disparity to working conditions across the world. I think it's also, though, important to be able to not stop that from being let you from being curious as to how you feel when you experience it. To let yourself kind of dig into those emotions a little bit, and to take part in some play. To think about, okay, what would it be like if I just let myself give in to this for a second? I think curiosity is a very important
That's beautiful.
thing to have.
It's beautiful. Thanks for summing it up, and thanks for showing that perspective. I was thinking as you were saying about curiosity. Yes, like I believe curiosity is a very major aspect to being human. Like, but while you're being curious, I think the sense of trust, because you talked about how much can we lean into this technology. So I think the sense of trust also comes into play. Like, how much can I trust a machine?
I would say the thing with AI is you should, I think that's why I say be critical, right? This can't be your ground truth source of information. AI hallucinates, right? It's really easy to make AI hallucinate. AI also is...
Can you give an example? Sorry,
Gosh.
I didn't mean to cut your thoughts.
Yeah. Let me think about a great example of hallucination. Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example that's like good for the layman. That's not like...
whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah. Easy one that comes to mind is the fact that you can... I see this happen all the time, actually. When you look up scholars who maybe are not as well known, maybe aren't fed as much into the system, they can come up with totally different answers to what their research may do. Right? Actually, yesterday, I actually have a great example, actually. 2 days ago, I was interacting with ChatGPT's advanced voice mode to understand better how it takes in things like breath, things that aren't words. How does it understand it and process it? Can it actually be able to tell if I'm breathing, if I'm breathing faster or slower? And I was with the advanced voice mode, and it could not, or it would argue that, yes, I can do this, I definitely can do this. And it would get close to right, and it makes you wonder, is it not? Whereas today I was doing more research into the scholarship around it, and also poking ChatGPT, right? The same system.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, I can't do this. Of course not. Right?
Okay.
So I think that it's really easy to create, it can hallucinate, it can create falsehoods. And I think also there are also certain corporate interests behind the data that is made. Data is not perfect.
Yeah.
They can like to say we have all this data in there. Data is true. Data is really easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we can necessarily always trust AI.
Yeah.
I think it's good for us to remain critical, to be able to work with it, right? Like, of course, I use AI at different points. I love using it as a thesaurus. You know, like help me figure out, what's a different word I can use here? But also being able to still use your individual judgment to conduct additional research around it, to still work hard, you know?
Yeah, I like that aspect.
It's important to work hard in for things. It's important. Effort and work is important.
Yeah.
And I'd say also there are corporate interests as well, right? I believe Meta is going to be using their AI, using AI to help create targeted ads for you. They just announced. You should fact check that before I actually say that. But I think, and different AI engines have talked about incorporating advertisements and buyable products into their systems, right? These are similarly to how we should take what we see on social media with a grain of salt, right? We should, or not a grain of salt, but with a critical eye.
Yeah.
We should also be taking what we get from AI.
Absolutely. Okay. Before I we go on the ending, go towards closure, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask, you mentioned about the stakeholders, or let's say you don't see it as a product. So if you don't see it as a product, how do you see people getting benefit out of it?
I see people getting benefit out of the research.
The research. So the research would probably be available for them too.
Yeah, so I think it's the writings, the both within academia, and then also more public situations, talks, artist talks, magazine articles. I also don't have these. I'm not going to become a superstar public academic just from one piece of work, right? Like, this is the unfortunate part of of academia, is that a lot gets lost and a lot doesn't get to come to people every day. And also, in terms of what they hope to get out of it, I also think of it as a bit of as an artwork as well in some ways, right? Like there is it's an experience for people to have. My small group of people that will take part in it will have. So I guess being both realistic, right? That this isn't going to change the world, my tiny bit of research, but maybe those who do read it and those who do interact with it, maybe it can cause them to pause a little bit.
I appreciate, and I also want to let you know, like your story is shared here. People are listening to your story, so maybe, as you mentioned, maybe you won't be a star, but optimistically, because you said you're optimistic sometimes, maybe optimistically, maybe, you know, at least there are more people than you probably have imagined knows your story, knows your research, knows what you're actually doing and what you're trying to contribute. So that's beautiful. On an ending note, I generally ask people a question. That's a kind of a traditional question, like, what is that one thing that you would like to do in your life that's you have been planning for a while, but it's part of your to-do list, but you haven't got a chance. So it's like something that you would like maybe motivate you to get back or work on it, something like that.
That's a good question. What is it?
I call
Okay,
it the
this is
moment
gonna
of-
sound this is gonna sound actually quite basic.
Sure.
I want to
Basic
travel.
basic is good.
Yeah, I want to travel more. My whole life, I've kind of been not into traveling.
It's funny. Okay. You have not been into traveling.
I have not liked traveling, and I always clown on people who talk about how their hobby is traveling. And then I went to Italy this summer for a conference, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!
Yeah.
Like I get it.
Yeah.
I get
Okay,
it
so
now."
travel. I wish you.
So I think I would love to explore more places, eat more food, different food. I used to work in food videos, and there's nothing I love more than that experience of eating.
Eating. Me too.
And so I guess getting to
Exactly.
travel and eat.
Well, I wish you the best for that, and I wish you achieve more. Starting this year, starting now, starting like I wish you attract more opportunities that come your way to help you travel and eat food, experience different foods, different cuisines at the same time. And I appreciate you for being here, sharing about your research, walking us through what you do, and like about how it could actually impact. So I would like to thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Avi. Appreciate it.
Thank you.